All right, so Trump just proposes the 50-year mortgage idea to help the affordability crisis for homebuyers. And at this point, it's not just being proposed. Based on the comment from the director from the FHFA, Bill Pulte, it looks as though this is already in the works. And of course, people are losing their minds. So here's what I want to do in this video. I'm going to first break down how this 50-year mortgage would actually work. And then we'll explore the pros and cons if this were to actually happen. And then I'll give you some other considerations to use to communicate to your clients who naturally, if you are a mortgage loan officer or you're a real estate agent who watches this channel, that you can use to answer the questions that they're naturally going to be asking you. Okay, so why is Trump doing this? Well, the intention obviously is to help affordability in this country for people that want to purchase a home get better. See, as a result of mortgage interest rates being, spiking to 7.5%, 8%, then they coming back down, thankfully, to right now they're hovering around 6.25%. Until those interest rates start to come back down, it is very difficult for home buyers to purchase home because of home prices. This all you already know. So what are the options? We can continue to have a housing market that is experiencing what we call demand destruction for a longer period of time, or we can introduce new options that perhaps would introduce new buyers to the marketplace, which would help the real estate market continue to move forward, right? The reality is right now, as we get ready to round out 2025, housing transactions are the worst that we've seen in decades. And so this is my belief. I could be totally wrong, by the way, but my belief is that Trump is trying to come up with a way to help the home buyer get out there and actually be able to afford a home because he continues to fight Jerome Powell and the Fed to lower interest rates. And it seems like that battle's been very difficult because he cannot get Jerome Powell to actually bring down mortgage interest rates to the point that it actually makes a difference in the home affordability crisis. Yes, the Fed is lowering the Fed's fund rate, but as you know, I made a video last week talking about how that actually had mortgage rates go up, not down. So the idea here is, how do we get creative to help home buyers go and purchase a home? It's not a novel concept, right? That's the goal. Why people are losing their shit is for a couple of reasons. Now, when you look at the 50-year mortgage, part of it is, and I understand, it makes borrowing money a lot more expensive. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so when you look at these two different options side by side, here's what they look like, right? And it's no real surprise. It's pretty simple. But the way things look like right now is the average home price in this country is right around $450,000. Putting 10% down on a 30-year mortgage, you're roughly going to be at a 6.25% on a 30-year fixed mortgage. That puts your mortgage payoff or your mortgage payment rather just under $2,500 per month. As a result, if you were to stay in that loan for the complete 30 years, you'd end up paying about $897,000 over the course of the life of the loan. In other words, the total interest on the mortgage would cost you $492,000 to finance the $405,000 that you borrowed. Now, if you put that in comparison to the 50-year mortgage idea, same purchase price, same down payment, but we amortize the loan over 50 years rather than 30 years. As a result, lenders, it's probably going to be more expensive, not just how much interest you pay, obviously, because it's a longer period of time, but the actual interest rate is probably going to be somewhere between 1/4% and 0.5% more. So when we look at that, the monthly payment goes down to $23.59. Now, if you were to just look at that alone, this is why. There's no surprise. the math is simple, right? If you're borrowing money and you amortize it over 50 years, well, of course, you're going to pay more in interest. In fact, the total interest on that loan would be over $1 million. It would cost you to borrow 405,000. In other words, over 600 mortgage payments, it would be $1.4 million out of your pocket to purchase a $450,000 house. That's why everyone is losing their mind. However, that's not the tactical reason why it's being introduced. It's easy to look at the downside. However, what we're looking at is, does this create a world where more people are able to afford a home? That's what we're looking at here. Does the difference in about $200 to $250 per month allow people to either A, afford a home in the first place, or B, increase their purchasing power? So when you look at the affordability calculator and you say, okay, the average income in the country now is somewhere around $83,000 or so per household. So what does that mean? With putting the 10% down that we talking about in this video at 6.25, that puts the mortgage payment at about $1,700, which means that this average home buyer in the country right now can afford up to buying a house for $315,000 based on current qualifying requirements. So then when you look at the new proposed 50-year opportunity or 50-year mortgage, and you change the loan term from 30 to 50, and we calculate that, this is what I mean by increasing purchasing power. Is that same buyer that went from being able to afford a house from 315 now can afford 350,000. Now, everyone again is losing their mind on only looking at, but it's going to be so much more expensive. They're going to pay so much more in interest over time. Right, we're going to deal with that in just a second. But right here, again, this is just a consideration. It's an option for buyers to either purchase more home because home prices are higher, or B, if we go back to the buyer's affordability, it helps to make things more affordable, thus introducing more opportunities for buyers or getting people who simply cannot afford to purchase a home that they need for their family. It allows them to potentially purchase a home. We don't know the impact in its entirety, but potentially that is the goal. Now, let's talk about this idea that people are going to be paying so much interest over the life of the loan. This is a terrible, terrible idea. Here's just a consideration. So here is a fact that the average U.S. homebuyer stays in one mortgage, not home. They stay in one loan, one mortgage for about 7 to 8 years before something happens. Either A, they do in fact decide to move, or B, they refinance because interest rates and things change in people's lives. It happens all the time. When you look at credit reports and you look at all the facts, you look at all the studies, it is extremely rare for somebody to stay in one loan for the entire 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years in which they originally structured their mortgage. That is extremely rare. So the big argument against this 50-year mortgage is, oh my gosh, can you see the difference between 30 and 50 years? I just showed you the amount of interest. It is absolutely crazy. But what is the likelihood that somebody stays in one mortgage for 30 years, let alone 50 years? It is extremely, extremely low. So as a result, if a 50-year mortgage allows the home buyer who otherwise wouldn't be able to get into a home, gets into a home, they're doing their 50-year mortgage, and maybe as things settle and they're in their new homes and things start to normalize a bit for them, they get a little bit more comfortable, they refinance out of that product into a new product. Or, like in many cases, people move, life changes. That's one consideration. Here's the other consideration. All right, so when you look at this whole argument of, well, you're going to pay all this extra interest over that 50-year loan, again, if we look at the facts, if we look at actual mortgage performance, again, the average homeowner is only staying either in that house or in that loan for about 7 years. So here's something that most people completely overlook. Because of the facts, then you have to introduce one of the best mortgage products out there, which is the 7-year ARM. I'm not even in the mortgage business anymore. So it's not like I'm promoting this, but you have to look at the math. If people are arguing, well, the math doesn't math. Okay, well, then here's the counter argument to that, because what's the likelihood someone's going to stay in the 30-year mortgage? Very, very unlikely. So if you compare that same logic to a 7-year ARM, then the same argument that people are making around why the 50-year mortgage is no good also then is true that the 30-year mortgage is no good. If the argument's the same, then it doesn't then they're missing the point, because their argument only holds up when it compares to somebody staying in a mortgage for that period of time, which we know they don't. And if that's the case, then you have to consider this. All right. So if you look at a 7-year ARM right now, because, well, ARMs are, listen, the reality is people most likely aren't even going to stay in this 7-year ARM. They'll probably sell or refinance before the 7-year ARM even comes up to the adjustable period. So I could just hear people in the comments freaking out about, oh my God, you're talking about ARMs? Are you crazy? It's just not likely. We have to look at probabilities here. We can't look at just doom and gloom, worst case scenario. You have to look at what is most likely going to happen. And we have facts that suggest what's going to happen. So in terms of interest rate on a 7-year ARM, it is about a point difference between what you can get on a 30-year fixed mortgage. The mortgage payment is about $260 less per month than on a 30-year fixed product. Over the course of that 7 years, it saves the borrower $21,000 real dollars that they get to keep in their pocket over that period of time. If you look at the principal over 7 years, not only are they saving money, but all the people that want to talk about and argue this whole interest, okay, well then tell me this. On this product, you pay $6,500 less in interest than you would on a 30-year fixed product. And you're saving money. So your payments are less per month and you're paying more down on the mortgage. It's a win-win. In terms of actual interest, over 7 years, you pay $19,000 in comparison to the $25,000. It's a $6,000 savings if you go with the 7-year product. So listen, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. But what I do know is that your clients, if you're a real estate professional or you're a mortgage professional, are going to have some questions this week. And the goal of this video was to allow you to be able to explain and articulate exactly what's going on, the pros and cons versus getting caught in the politics of this. And that's where I think is really, really dangerous. It's, okay, how do I look at this objectively? There are pros, there are cons. I walk you through both. And if the argument is, oh, this is just out to get the working class and, just getting to people, ripping people off. Well, then if that's the argument, then you have to have the same argument with all of those people that are getting 30-year mortgages versus the ARM product. And so if it's about that, then the 30-year mortgage is also evil. So I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to promote one or the other. I'm not here to advocate for the 50-year mortgage or to defend it. I'm just proposing different perspectives on what could happen if this comes to fruition. I hope that it gives you some clarity as you start to navigate these questions that you inevitably are going to be getting from your clients.